Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, I guarantee you we're going to have a conversation that's going to blow your mind. We're going to be talking about all the conversations that we have in our business, whether they're sales conversations, whether they're conversations in, support, in customer success. We have lots of conversations. And in the world of AI, what that means is those conversations are liquid gold. The things that we're talking to prospects about, the things we're talking to our customers about, listening to thousands and thousands of conversations, and then really making something incredible out of it. We're going to be talking with Thomas McCarthy-Howe. Thomas, you are the CTO of STROLID, and I'm going to let you kind of expand on this, but you're actually the co-author of the standard, and I'm going to let you explain what that is. But your company and what you do, you manage over 6,000 conversations a day. If you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about you, tell us a little bit about your company and what this vCon standard is, and then we're going to dive right into the conversation here.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm what's called a communications engineer or a networking engineer, and I've done that my whole life. My father worked in a group at Raytheon as I was growing up. And I became really interested in the field, and I did the same kind of work. And early on, we designed modems, and I was early in video conferencing and all that stuff. So I've worked on that technology for a lot of my life, and I loved it. It's been, I got to tell you, it's the best thing ever happened to me in my life. I just can't tell you how much I love being an engineer. And I had met the founder of STROLID about 3 years ago when I was just coming off a project. And, he ran this call center for automotive companies. And so what we do is we help people find their new car, and they click on a Car Guru's ad and we call them back. In the automotive space, it's called a BDC. We're an outsourced BDC, and we have 150 dealerships that we work for, every brand. I think maybe before we didn't have a Lamborghini dealer, but now we do. Mm-hmm. So I think we've now run the franchise bingo card. And so, when I met Vinny, he said, we had all these great conversations about people buying cars, but I'm not sure what to do with them. And they had no tech. And that kind of white piece of paper just really attracted me. And so we started working together at STROLID about looking at customer conversations and what they could tell you. And one of the first things we understood was there is no actual definition for a conversation. It means all kinds of things. We're having a conversation, and you've got text messages and emails, and you've got voice and video and things that don't go over electronics, right? There's conversations everywhere, but there's no way of defining it. And that's really what the vCon standard is. It's a file format that contains a conversation. So just like a Word file holds a document and a JPEG holds a picture, a vCon holds a conversation, and it allows you to capture what you mean by the conversation, which is part of the problem. But inside of it is the recording and who was in each recording, and it has a context so you know what they were talking about, and then a list of how it was processed by the robots. And that was actually the most important part, the robots part. But does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And what I want to do is the technology behind it. We're all trained these days that the technology is just wowing us, right? It's no longer the things that are kind of in the background. It's like, wow, this is dramatically changing our lives. And AI is one of those things. But how do you take this vCon standard, these conversations, the technology that's available to us, and how do you mine that database of all those conversations and learn tremendous things? That's the gold mine, right? The gold mine on its own, when the gold's down on the ground, fantastic. It doesn't mean anything until you actually pull the gold out. How are you helping us pull that gold out so we can do something and benefit from it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me tell you how we're using the conversations. We really changed the way our business runs. Once you begin to actually listen to the conversations of your customers, you realize they tell you things about your business that you didn't know. And so there's a lot of all this dark operational data that is passed from person to person verbally, but never written down, never captured. And one of the things that we found really was, and we were in a contact center, so we have 150, chances to test this. If you just listen to your customers and what you say back to your customers, it's a great proxy for the entirety of the business. And if you want to know what your business is and what your customers want, you'd listen to them. The problem is only the guy who runs the lemonade stand listens to all of his customers because there's just too many to listen to. And what AI can do for you is to take those conversations and listen to them at a rate that you couldn't. And so you can ask questions of it. Like my favorite is, what are customers saying I should do better?
Right.
And man, it's revealing. It's totally revealing.
So
Now,
that's amazing right there. I just had to stop you, right? So it's one thing to say like, hey, how many conversations were had about this problem? How many conversations were had about this problem or about this vehicle or about this franchise, right? But when you ask it a question that seems like it needs to think about that answer, right? So can you restate the question again you just said? Because I think it's just amazing.
well, here's a really good example of that. Who are my best agents and why? And so it's a fairly complex thing to ask a robot.
Right.
But when the robot has, the conversations, it's not judging just on a hallucination. It's actually getting the real conversation. And by the way, just say one really hilarious thing that we didn't see this happening, but so we can talk about the vCon standard. It's a working group in what's called the IETF, and the IETF stands for the Internet Engineering Task Force, and it sounds very 80s, which I love. And they're the fine folks who brought you all the internet protocols. So HTTP, FTP, they brought you email. If you've ever figured how does email work? Well, it's an IETF protocol. TCP, all those things are IETF protocols. And when you train an LLM, it gets all the publicly available information it can get from Wikipedia and this and that and this, and from the IETF, which is why you can ask ChatGPT, please write me a program that will get me a web page.
Right.
Because it knows how webs work, because it read the IETF protocols, just like it's going to read the vCon protocol. So now, because it's already been trained on the protocol, there's a lot less hallucination to it because it knows how to read the file format, which is one of the reasons it works just so well.
So how does it think for us, right? You can ask it now, and it's going to look at these thousands and thousands and thousands and then millions of conversations, right? And it's going to take all that information, but tell us how it helps us strategically think. So in other words, what are the best ways to cross-sell and upsell somebody that came in for a Toyota Tercel up to a Camry or things like that? That you would think you'd have to look at the data, you'd have to have the human brain to think about this stuff, right?
Well, yeah, you know what, you would, and I think a lot of the value comes from something which is actually a lot more blunt. So what we're finding is that we're simply seeing it. We're getting data we never got before, and it's not so much that we're reasoning differently; it's just that we're reasoning better because we have more information to reason about. Right. So here's how we came to that. So I'm sure you've seen all the sentiment channel things that a lot of vendors are doing. And when we started making vCons, we decided that was one of the most important use cases with sentiment. So we started looking at sentiment of our own customers, looking for the times we would be bad at our jobs. Well, the first thing we learned was we weren't bad at our jobs. Actually, pretty good. People were angry. They came to us angry. We didn't make them angry. They were generally angry before we found them. And why were they angry? For 1,000 things no one knew. I drove an hour to see a car that wasn't in the lot. Right. Want to talk about customer experience? That's a customer experience.
Right.
And so it's not necessarily that the robots are allowing you to have a deeper level of reasoning, but they're scaling your ability to get data that you couldn't have gotten. Like, you just don't know all the things your customers have said, and you could have recorded it, but you would. So we have a joke. We call it Papa in a box. Papa is my founder's father who listens to all the phone calls, coaching our agents. The problem is that Papa couldn't listen to all the calls once we started making 6,000 calls a day. So what it does is give you Papa in a box and the ability to ingest way more information than you could have otherwise, and then use just normal kinds of logic. Like, okay, what are we doing right? What are people asking for that we don't sell?
When you say things like, what are we doing right? If I ask
Yeah.
10 different people that have worked inside of your company at all different levels, I might get 10 different answers.
That's right. Yeah.
Why would I get one answer, and why would it be the right answer?
Well, for our particular case, the answer is obvious because it's your customer telling you what you're doing right.
Yes.
Which seems germane. It seems like it's something you'd want to know.
Yes, absolutely. We all know that the customer is the highest voice of authority, right? So it's
sure.
in fact, I don't know if you've ever heard of Amazon's empty chair policy.
I haven't.
The chair is a chair that's empty in every meeting or every virtual meeting now, right? But it's a chair that represents the customer. So
nice.
if the customer were here sitting with us in this meeting, how would they be helping us and informing us make the decisions we're trying to make?
Yeah. And so I think this is a good point, good part. I'd like to just touch on what the vCon actually does for us, because I know that there's there are places who are taking sentiment. There's Otter, who's doing a great job of recording transcriptions, and there's a lot of conversational AI out there, but it's pretty dangerous. And the vCon standard is the thing that allows you to manage that danger. And so here's the metaphor. I'm not sure if you know the story of dynamite.
No,
but it's a great story. So Alfred Nobel was the same guy who did the Nobel Prize. Was a scientist and an engineer, and was working with hydroglycerin. And it was during a time of a lot of manufacturing, a lot of construction, and they were blowing a lot of things up. But the problem with hydroglycerin is that it's very volatile. It's very dangerous stuff. And so Alfred Nobel is for some reason playing with his hydroglycerin on the beach. It falls off the table and doesn't kill him. It doesn't kill him because the calcium that's in the shells moderated the explosives of the nitroglycerin, and the two together make TNT and dynamite. So dynamite is safe to transport and to work with in a way that nitroglycerin was not. And so the vCon, what it does is it protects digital privacy and personal data rights, because we all have them. And it gives you a framework by which you can capture what is real in the world, like a real conversation, and redact it so you can share it with others who want to know what they said, but they don't need to know who said it. And it allows you to track where the data went. It allows a customer to say, I want to withdraw my consent for AI, so you can train on it. And so all the AI training that is on customer voices, the vCon's designed so that you can stay on the right side of ethics and the law, just like dynamite. It's the same kind of idea.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating. It's basically, it's an anonymized set of conversations, but it has all the right ways that you can look into it, whether it's like, I want to know just the conversations from this last week. I want to know conversations just at this, that happened at this certain level of sentiment. I just, you can have full control.
You could, absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's completely scalable because, this is an internet standard and it's a big world. And so some of the use cases are for governments and for law enforcement and for defense, where the more important thing is to make sure that has this integrity. It is not fake, and it's the authentic thing. And there are things like people in the marketing department who are trying to get voice of customer, who probably shouldn't know your social security number, your actual name.
Okay.
Right. And this allows you to take that conversational data and put it where it needs to be and manage the security of the data as you do it.
Got it. So I want to transition here, because I think you've explained extraordinarily well. Thank you. Kind of how this works in this vCon standard. The people who are listening right now are the leaders in B2B organizations, CEOs, CMOs, CROs, head of sales, head of VP, head of customer success. And they're all wondering, how do I mine it for that gold? What's it going to do for me? Right. And so the thing that really stood out to me is we haven't really had a lot of help in strategizing. What I mean by that is tell me my best agents, right? So the head of a contact center can actually have a very informed perspective on that versus much more anecdotal or situational evidence. If I'm a chief marketing officer, right, I want to know, how do I create better campaigns, right? If I'm, a CEO, I want to know, how do I help my customers sell more cars?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's take that. Like, I know you've had this conversation. How do we help our clients sell more cars? Right. Like, how does the conversation help you do that? And say, if you asked, what are the top 3 ways that I can help our customers sell more cars?
Yeah.
That level of strategy seems like, give us the data, and as humans, we'll be able to surmise that. Right. How does that happen from the data?
So the first thing to like catch on to is, and I'll give you three good use cases for this. But they all kind of depend on this one idea, that right now, a lot of the conversational data and data that we try to analyze is in a silo. It's in one place. You can't get it out. And what a vCon does is it allows you to use the robot you need. And that really speaks to, the conversations are authentic and real, but the ways you use them are very, very different considering who you might be. So here's a couple of examples. I'll start with ours. So ours is done for transparency. Our customers who are in dealerships need to understand everything we say to their customers. And so our strategy as a business was to increase the transparency we had with our customers, and to do it in a way in which they couldn't do it themselves, right? To increase the stickiness of our business with our partner customers. And how do we do that? We gave them transparency services like search. We're giving them GPT, which lets them ask questions about their company. And the final thing is signals. So signal is basically, every time a conversation happens, tell me about it if it matches. Like, I want to know angry customers, or someone says like the car smells like smoke, or when someone swears or threatens, or whatever it might happen to be. So what we did was to use that as our strategy. Now, another, which is really, very, very, very different, we get a lot of inbounds on ports of entry. Now, ports of entry are very secured places, and they're targets of malfeasance and bad nation actors all the time. And so their strategy was to increase the observability of their security by unifying it all together. Because you can't really tie an email conversation to a voice conversation, but you put them all in vCons because it handles all of that, then you can finally unify it. So you've got a unified idea. That's their view. Now, another entirely different way of strategies of how to do this, one of our automotive use cases is we have 6,000 conversations a day, and sometimes people talk about cars. I like the Ford F-150 because it's got a blank.
Right.
There is a product owner of the Ford F-150 who can now hear every single thing that the customers say about their car. And so the strategies in that layer is, what does it mean to actually listen to your customer? Not to have a focus group, not to pretend that you can give an NPS score and that's going to give you enough of a thing. But what does it mean to actually listen? And that's been the craziest part, because once you start looking at the conversations, you realize you never did. Like, I never did any of this stuff.
Right.
It's really hard to say, okay, you should listen to your customer. You really should.
So what you're saying is that I can train it. I can say there's sentiment analysis, there's keyword analysis, and I can look across all of this, and I can say, here's where people were excited about their cars, why, what they loved, what they didn't. So let's take all the things that they loved, let's take all the things that they didn't, and let's learn from that. So therefore, I can ask the system, based on what everybody loves about their F-150s, how do I
Right.
better sell
Yeah.
F-150s? Because I
Right.
know what the most important things are. So therefore, I can ask the system, how do I increase sales of F-150s? And that's how it learns. Is that
Yeah.
a good takeaway from it?
100%. Exactly how it goes. Yep.
Ah,
100%.
ah,
Yeah. And it's remarkably democratic. A lot of these services may have existed recently, but for very large money. That's not quite so true anymore. You can make a vCon for pennies, and your chat GPT costs how much?
right.
And the fact that the vCon will now provide that legal support for compliance and right to know and everything. I think it's going to become a choice. There'll be companies who actually listen to their customers, and the customers are going to find out which ones those are.
Do you have anything
No,
like this for teenagers? Because I got 4 at home.
I do not. No,
Okay.
all you have is that.
I was another conversation. Sorry, I digress here. So what's the when you see the next step, right? This is where we are today. Where are we going to be a year from now, 2 years from now? Where is this going to evolve to?
Yeah. So I, I feel like the world of mass personalization is here, and I'm sure there's many on the call here who know about customer data platforms. And for those of you who don't, basically, it's the idea that you can track your customer's journey as they're in their marketing journey. So they open an email and they click on the website,
Mhm.
maybe they call the contact center. But the most ironic thing about a CDP is that as soon as the customer opens their mouth, nothing.
Yeah.
As soon as they have everything except what the customer actually said, which is so inside out. He opened the mail,
Right.
but I don't want to know what he said.
Right.
Right. So what I really expect to have happen is there would be this really uptick in mass personalization, because you can reference previous conversations, whether they were in emails or over the desk or on a phone. And you can use those in your next communication. You can actually act like you know who your customer is instead of asking them every single time to like verify that.
Right.
Uh, and that's the kind of a relationship I really think can be enabled and at scale. And I think that's really new. And I think that's going to be a big deal as the next, 3 to 5 years goes down.
So, because we all think we're already in the world of hyper personalization, right? We've been taught, that's been a buzzword. We've heard it now for years. But what you're talking about is an entirely new level. An entirely new level. Is this going to be the kind of thing where, so the applications are not only, I can ask questions of it, but I can ask it to do work for me now. So,
Oh,
yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty common workflow we have with our GPT product, where we'll say, make me list of the unhappy customers today. Bing, bing, bing. Please write them an email based on what made them unhappy and suggest something we can do to make it right. And they just write the 3 emails, and they're way better than most of my agents can write. I like my agents very much. They're beautiful people, but we're from north of Boston, so we're meatheads, not exactly, great at the pen. And so it really helps us, craft those emails quickly and based upon what the customers actually said. And it's a great little use case. And that lets us be empathetic at scale,
Yeah.
right? Imagine what it would have taken for us to identify the 3, get the contact information out.
So you said something interesting. You were like, take the, it's all been in history, by the way, but take all the most dissatisfied customers, right? Write them an email that, that empathizes with what happened and provide something that could help. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that would take, I would think, looking at each one and why were they unhappy and what were they talking about? They were talking about a Ford, they were talking about a Lamborghini, and then something that would help. So how does it define that? Right? How does it understand situationally why they were so unhappy? Like,
So
you explain
yeah,
that, because that would take, tell somebody to do that. They'd have to like look at it. And they'd have to really think, wait, now what can I say that
well,
would be?
it's a little nutty. It's a little nutty. So we're a car company. We're proud in the automotive space, and and we claim to have the most innovative department in automotive, which I think might be true. but we don't train for automotive. We don't actually, any of the stuff that we do isn't automotively centered. We just take the conversations and a straight LLM, no training. And the two together, even today, do a very, very good job at knowing what are the appropriate things to offer in a save the customer email. Like, here's an oil change, and here's a brake job, and here's a just not brake job, but here's like free brake pads next time you have a brake job, right? Right. These have been solved. Like, there's a whole internet full of ways of doing this that you just can't get to, that it can. It's a great, it's a great co-pilot. It's really a great co-pilot. If you don't have one of those advising you, you really should. And this helps you, if you add the conversations to it, yeah, there it goes.
It sounds like you've created a system that you said we don't train it on automotive, right? Sounds like you have a system that you could actually do this in a lot of different industries. And if
Yeah.
everyone that's watching and listening here says, this is great, I want to do this. Right? And you talked about vCons or, pennies on the dollar, how much we pay for ChatGPT. We have no idea. We have no idea how to put this together. Right. So
Yeah.
is there going to be now a need for, vCon consultants,
Yeah. Well, fun to say. There's a burgeoning ecosystem of vCon, players.
Yeah.
So here at STROLID, our technology side hustle is that we make three applications that roughly correspond to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint for people who run stores. And it's search, so you can Google your business. It's GPT, so you can ask questions about it, just like I was describing. And signals, where you can, figure out if that's a conversation you care about. But we have a number of vendors and phone companies who are making vCons that are available for our tools, but for others' tools as well. There's maybe 6 or 7 now. And we have a hackathon, which is happening this weekend, our 4th annual vCon hackathon, where college students create applications based on vCons. It's a very easy standard to work with. So we consistently have people who self-train and create applications. It's not that hard. So it's bubbling up, and it's fun to see.
So if everything we've talked about here, right? If there was one thing that you wanted the audience to be left with, one thing to remember, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, I would say I would deeply encourage them to be responsible and listen to their customers and do it responsibly. I think the mature business will take on the mantle of being mature and listening to their customers and protecting their data.
I think that's a fantastic segue into, I know people are going to have questions. Is it appropriate that we maybe give a link to your LinkedIn profile out so that people could reach out and ask questions?
Yeah, I'd love to talk with them. Yeah, love to talk with them. And we've, if you're a technologist, you can join us at the IATF. It's, we're looking for more inputs there. You can find me on my LinkedIn profile. We're doing a great job at selling our vCon technology at STROLID. So please visit us there as well. Mama got to eat, and happy to talk to anyone.
Fantastic. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for kind of like blowing our minds in a very, very good way. I really appreciate the time you spent with us here today.
Nice meeting you. Yeah, thanks for the time.